So Call of Duty dropped their white paper. If you go to Twitter, you can go ahead and click on the link. I'm gonna have a link in the description. But when you go to the white paper, this is kind of like a summary of it. And this is kind of what I mainly cover in the video. Otherwise, it would be like a 2-hour long video talking about the matchmaking. When you click on the link in here, I'll go ahead and link this as well. It's gonna go ahead and take you to this section, which doesn't look that crazy. When you click here, it takes you to this. And it is a very long, detailed summary or explanation of all that appears in the summary. So what we're covering today is more the abridged version. I will link this because some people might find this interesting, but it gets super technical. And I think the summary does a great job of kind of breaking down some of those things and simplifying some of these more complex topics as we go through the video. So we're going to talk about it. The skill part of skill-based matchmaking. I know there's a lot of like issues regarding skill-based matchmaking. There's a lot of misconceptions. But generally, if you're a better player, the opponents you're going to go against on average are going to be better. A lot of people think if you're a 1.4 KD, you're a terrible player. Keep in mind that you're in the top like 30% of players if you have a 1.4 KD. The most common KD players have in Warzone or in Call of Duty is a 0.86. The average, because obviously a kill equals a death, ends up being around 1. And it's slightly less than that because you can die to the gas, you can die to fall damage without ever running into anybody. And that's kind of how that part works. But we'll see what the heck goes on with this, because obviously this connection, what they're trying to, for multiplayer matchmaking, keeping in mind that some of these things are going to be slightly different for Warzone, but still matchmaking nonetheless has now been referred to engagement-based optimized matchmaking or whatever the heck. So we'll go ahead and kind of read through what they have to say. I'll give some of my opinions on it and how I think the system could or should change in the future. So with respect to skill, one area that is critical to consider is team balance. Team balancing is very important for forming games where players can have fun and enjoy competitive matches. This is typically going to be 6v6. Blowouts result in players leaving the game, which adversely affects the player pool. And there's a lot of times you'll end up spawning, especially in older CODs, you would spawn in on a match in progress and it would say enemy chopper in the air or whatever the case is, and you just back out again. So then the playlist never fills back up, but let's continue. So team balance itself is covered in more detail within the white paper. As previously detailed, the first matchmaking intel blog, which is about ping, considering player skill among other factors as part of the matchmaking process as far back as Call of Duty 4. So yes, even the original Call of Duty had it, but what happens is if you have all these sliders on what's important, the actual skill wasn't a huge important factor. It still played a factor in lobby balancing. So typically if you were a really good player, you usually got the worst players, but you weren't going against a team stacked of full other good players as often. It was usually like one other good player in the map, because in general, like I mentioned earlier, most players aren't that good. So what happens is it's very rare to find good players in the game. So if you only match them up, you usually have one good player versus one good player, and then 5 bad players on each side. And essentially they're both carrying their team. And if the good player leaves, then you can have that potential for a blowout. And that's typically how it used to work prior to Modern Warfare 2019. They tried to play with the sliders there, and they also impacted SBMM. One of the topics explored in the white paper is recent and historical testing around loosening skill-based matchmaking, increasing the gap in skill between players in a lobby. History of testing: as technology and expertise has evolved to make more money, our team has increased our matchmaking test analysis over the last 5 years with Modern Warfare 2019, always working to provide the best experience for players. I don't know. For example, one study focused on Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 conducted across North America compared the control group of players without any changes to matchmaking to players with experience loosen skill considered in matchmaking. So standard strict SBMM where you go, it feels sweaty, and then how it kind of used to be, they say. The test showed that players with wider skill gaps were more likely to quit matches in progress and did not return to the game at a higher rate than players with unchanged matchmaking, which makes sense. You get curb stomped, you realize you're not as good as the game was protecting you to be, you're going to stop playing, right? That does make sense. So they are doing exactly what we thought they, were doing. Read about the tests and detailed findings in matchmaking. So they've already done the head-to-head. I know there's like a lot of thought where, hey, if they just removed it, the player base would go insane. Well, they've already tested it, and this is the example of that. So it means that the system was essentially here to stay, right? Increased match quit rates. The likelihood of a player to quit during a match increased across 80% of players within the study. Holy, people do not like getting curb stomped. Return to matchmaking. Within the sample study, 90% of players in the Lucens group did not return at a higher rate than the control group. That's a little misleading. How many just, the thing stayed the same? It says 90% of players did not increase. Like, huh? Indicated that the low to mid skill left the game in a greater numbers. The net effect of this was a decrease in overall player population across the study group. Therefore, the likely result of the compounding over time will lead to player population that features only high-skilled players at increasing rates. I think this is a little bit misleading. There's no way you're going to end up with only high-skilled players. That's not really how that works, in my opinion. Because Call of Duty did it for like a decade, and there wasn't only high-skilled players. So I don't know about that one, Chief. I wish they referenced that. Hopefully they will. Blowout matches where blowouts a score delta greater than 30 increased across all skill levels in team deathmatch. That's kind of a terrible metric, but for just team deathmatch, I don't even think Sweaty's played team deathmatch like that anymore. Maybe that's just an example. I'd love to see it in hardpoint, control, these other factors. It's just really hard to determine because generally good players, what they'll do is elongate the match by not intentionally playing the objective. So that maybe they get ahead and then they stop playing the objective so they can get more kills. Or they play the objective so they get the lead, and then the other team's fighting aggressively. They let them get points, make it feel like it's close, and then they end up finishing the match because they were in control the whole time. That's a common, thing that a lot of good players will do, just so they can try and get more kills. And the ability to control the match to that level and that degree is definitely a skill, but obviously it's not going to show up when they're testing team deathmatch. Another example was a test to tighten skill-based matchmaking. This had inverse results consistent with the results of the loosening test. Quit rate was down for 90% of players, and we saw other improvements in experience of low-skilled players. Oh, thankfully they get the best experience possible. We all play a different game, right? However, we observed negative impacts on high-skilled players. As a result, this change was not rolled out as a standard approach. Okay, yeah. As we continue to strive for balance or matchmaking. All right. So they've told us exactly what we thought we knew. The existing matchmaking system allows a broader range of players to have access and exposure to all key parts of Call of Duty's game design and core multiplayer. This includes games where players can contribute meaningfully to their team, not only with wins, but for their own personal records and achievements. This system strives for team balance where players are not consistently on the wrong side of a blowout match. As players who frequently experience blowouts are seen to quit matches in progress and game itself, which negatively impacts the experience of players of all skill levels. The marginal performance increase, I wouldn't call it marginal, for high skilled players with loosened skill consideration represents a short-term gain. The highest skilled players are likely to get more matches where they could blow out the competition in short term, but when that occurs, the competition tends to play less. And the result is that the player pool shrinks overall, with low and mid-skilled players exiting core multiplayer pool. Yep, that's why Call of Duty as a franchise died for those first 10 years, and it only went downhill, right? I know there were some bad games, but it was because they were bad, not because the SBMM was too loose. In my opinion, I guess, I don't know, maybe someone in the comments understands it differently. Players can see this impact in legacy Call of Duty games today. Older titles which have similar matchmaking systems are active with predominantly high skill players, which forces multiplayer lobbies to be created for a group of dedicated community members. I feel like that they're trying to gaslight people. They don't believe that. No, duh. Somebody who's been playing the game for 7 years is probably good at the game, and they're predominantly good at the game. Bro, there's no way they're saying, oh yeah, see these systems, all the bad players left. Yeah, they bought the new game. That's what Call of Duty players do. They just buy the new game. Some people are still stuck on the old one, but damn. Players can only match against who is online regardless of any system designed to form lobbies. And if you play on those lobbies, it actually does feel organic. You get into lobbies pretty quickly because it's not trying to make the best experience. Sometimes you'll get blown out. Sometimes you'll do the stomping, and sometimes it's a competitive match. At the end of the day, I think that adds playlist variety. They're making the assumption that when they loosen it up that every match, the best player is just curb stomping everyone. They never have competitive matches, which I think it's a little disingenuous so far unless they correct that. For detailed examination of skill, one of the many factors that help develop Call of Duty's approach for multiplayer matchmaking, read the latest white paper matching series, the role of skill. Okay, this is what we're doing right now. Does competing against high skill players make low skill players better at the game? All right. Playing at a better opponent may push players to become more proficient over time, but being severely outperformed in matches, our testing has shown, instead leads to players to quit matches in progress or to not play multiplayer. Why does Call of Duty measure skill differently between game modes? Skill is split between all major core multiplayer modes, as proficiency is one doesn't necessarily indicate proficiency in others. Players should be able to play mode like ranked play as intended, as they choose without impacting their experience in unranked modes where players can, for example, experiment with loadouts. That is a lie. You cannot experiment with loadouts in sweaty SBMM if you're a high skill player. That's just not how it works. If I go in with the pistol, people are still using the rival 9 or whatever. They're using the meta weapons for multiplayer. And that's what it is, right? Why is skill factor in unranked core modes when ranked play is available? Ranked play is designed to deliver an expressly competitive environment. Accordingly, players must qualify for access to ranked modes. Many players who have qualified for ranked still choose to enter a game in non-ranked playlists. For new players and those who do not participate in ranked play, it's important they can contribute meaningfully to a team and their own personal in-game achievement. The next matchmaking series white paper fully detailed rank play, which obviously will be stricter. Has Call of Duty considered launching single core playlist that does not use? Yes, Call of Duty has considered this option, and the team will continue to explore. As a match can be created, the players actively searching for the playlist, the likely result would be matches composed solely of skilled players. Yeah, because you're only using part of the player base, limiting playlists. So I don't think we learned anything. I think there's a little bit of gaslighting in there. I would love to see the numbers, because they gave a specific example that I don't agree with. And then they gave another example, which I think is intentionally disingenuous, because if you go back to older Call of Duties, you do get a little bit of balance. I mean, I don't quit especially when they made it so that it was on Xbox Game Pass, and they've done other things where we were able to go backwards compatibility. We played through pretty much all of them on stream. We were able to play for multiple hours without even and we had some good games, had some bad games because of connectivity. There's some, whatever issues with some of the older games. I mean, it was fun. Obviously nostalgia, but still fun. So I don't know. I don't feel like this gave us any new intel other than they're not changing it. And one thing that's completely left off of this, they do talk about team balancing, but they don't acknowledge what it is for players that have varying skill levels of friends. So for example, I have friends that are better than me because I know a lot of streamers, but then I also have plenty of friends that are worse than me because I know the casual player, whether they're from chat or whatever. There's a lot of people that are worse than me. What happens is they did not do enough to explain what happens in that instance. And I don't think they ever will, because generally what happens is when you play with people above your skill level, because of the matchmaking, they try to tighten it up. So the lower skilled player has a bad experience. And that leads us into our next thing, which gets abused. And this also contributes to two boxing, which is a whole nother story. If you're interested in a video about two boxing, let me know. I had one prepped. I decided not to ship it, but we'll kind of see how that goes. Appreciate all the support. Thank you for watching as always. Have a great day.